across the battlefields of history, from the trenches of the Somme to the skies over Europe. Brave men stood shoulder to shoulder, guided not only by duty, but by something deeper. In every generation, soldiers, sailors, and airmen have served with honor, often far from home, yet never far from fellowship. For many, that fellowship extended beyond the uniform. In quiet lodges in foreign lands, by candlelight and compass, they found a home in Freemasonry. Service, sacrifice, camaraderie. These are the values that unite the armed forces and Freemasonry. In 2021, the United Grand Lodge of England made a historic commitment, one that formalised centuries of support and solidarity. By signing the Armed Forces Covenant, UGLE pledged to uphold the values shared by both institutions: honour, integrity, loyalty, and service. It was a moment of recognition, not just of the many Freemasons who have served in uniform, but of the unique bond that continues to unite them.
The Armed Forces Covenant, in essence, is a pledge to the nation to not disadvantage those that served and their families. It was created because the need came about. We realised in an Iraq, Afghanistan world, we needed to treat our service personnel and their families with the dignity that they deserved.
In the heart of the National Memorial Arboretum, a special place offers lasting tribute to Freemasons who serve. The Masonic Memorial Garden stands as a place of reflection, rooted in remembrance and rich in symbolism. Each word engraved, each emblem carved, tells a story of courage, of service, and of brotherhood.
Standing here among the names and memorials of the fallen, we are reminded that our actions today must always be rooted in respect, gratitude, and responsibility, a foundation on which we build stronger connections. To all those who serve and have served, this is your home within Freemasonry.
There's respect for those we remember, friendship among those who stand together, integrity in the sincerity of the occasion, and there's a deep sense of service, both for the lives in which we are honouring, but also in our commitment to carry those values forward. So it's a moment of reflection, shared purpose, and quiet pride.
While the Masonic Memorial Garden honours those who served in years past, their legacy lives on, not only in stone, but in spirit.
So the history of the circuit, it dates back to the early 1990s and has its origin with three members of the three founding lodges, of which my own lodge, Ubiquity Lodge, was one. They conceived over a few drinks after a festive board, after a dinner, following a lodge meeting, that it would be a really good idea to have some sort of association that military lodges could belong to, and that could, genuinely sort of bring them together and encourage them to visit each other. And so that's where it was formed, and it started off with 3 lodges, and it's grown over time to 58, nearly 60 lodges today. The circuit of service lodges started off very much with an aim of encouraging visiting between military lodges. I'm hoping to take it into a slightly different direction now, which is very much around how we encourage and promote Freemasonry to the wider military community. So how do we get people to understand what Freemasonry is, people in the military, people in the veteran community, and see it as something that they'd like to become part of. And I think we can do that through there being identifiable military lodges that they can actually join, which might be associated to the Cap Badge or the branch of the armed services they are in, or might be a local combined services lodge. We have many lodges as part of the circuit, so 58 currently. One of those lodges, and one of my particular favourites, is Invictus Lodge up in York. They're a fantastic lodge. In fact, their Primus Master, their establishing master, is part of our own lodge, Ubiquity Lodge. He's an ex-gunner. But I've always had a very, very warm welcome whenever I visited Invictus. It's a fantastic combined services lodge, which has a real ethos and spirit of the military, and a huge amount of fun, both in their meetings and in their festive boards, in their social events and gatherings afterwards.
We're a fairly young lodge. We haven't been going that long, just a few years. But the camaraderie in the lodge. We've got all forces in there: military, navy, RAF, Marines. When we have different days within the lodge on our meetings, sometimes we'll have a navy theme, military theme, RAF theme, just little things like that. We stand the lodge to, and then we stand the lodge down. It's military tradition: stand to, stand down.
I would say that the way we conduct the lodge business is we do it very much in a regimental and a military way, because that's what people know. We obviously, we're not in the military anymore. There are some serving members, but we try to keep those traditions. We try to do things with a bit of pomp and ceremony. We try to, put some, we don't drill people around, but when we take candidates around, we tell them to left turn, right turn, about turn, that sort of thing, because it's what people know. So we can get the actual ceremony looking slick because of the background, the military background and the training that everybody has had. Because as you're probably aware, to be a member of Invictus, you had to have served as a regular soldier, sailor airman or a reservist. So you would have done some military training of some sort.
For myself personally, it's when I left the forces, I was sort of lost. There was something missing from my life after I left. I spent a long time in the military. So then I found Freemasonry, which it wasn't the discipline and that was missing. It was a structure. It was the structure of the lodge, the same as where the military had their structure going through the ranks and everything else. You're part of your unit or your corps. It's part of a big family.
Through Fisher House in Warwickshire, Freemasons continue to support service members and their families in distressed circumstances. This is reflected in the continued contributions from Warwickshire Freemasons and beyond, through their tercentenary celebrations. A commitment not only to Freemasonry, but to the communities in which we serve.
Fisher House is a home away from home for military patients and their families. Here at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Birmingham, we're the receiving hospital for the UK's military, whether they're coming for trauma injuries or whether they're coming for medical treatments. And those patients are not just coming from all over the UK, but can come from all over the world.
The values at Fisher House resonate very closely to those of Freemasonry in general and those of Warwickshire in particular. But the one that I would pick out would be service. The Armed Forces personnel who use the Royal Centre for Defence Medicine and their families who use Fisher House have quite often sacrificed a great deal physically and mentally in the service of their country. And as our Grand Master, His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent, said, we owe them an enduring sense of gratitude and support. And I think that was another reason why Warwickshire decided to use Fisher House for our tercentenary appeal.
And we hear from Alistair Cairns, MP, Minister of Veterans and People.
Well, first of all, I think it shows the willingness of sort of the whole of the UK to get behind military charities and supporting the individuals in the armed forces or those that serve. The Freemasons have absolutely gone leaps and bounds ahead and are going to help support that Fisher House, which again provides just fantastic accommodation for families to sit next to their loved ones while they're recovering.
In the faces of athletes like Clive Jones and Kemsley Whittlesey, we see not only perseverance, but the enduring strength of brotherhood and belief. As Freemasons and veterans, they remind us courage is not just found in combat, but in rising again.
Well, actually for me, it started when I was initially blinded. I was taken to a charity for blinded ex-servicemen and women called St Dunstan's, which is now called Blind Veterans UK. And they showed me archery as part of my rehabilitation. That was in 2001. Sport has played a massive part in my life. Initially, when I was blinded, I did have a moment of depression, and obviously PTSD and all the rest of it kicked in. Freemasonry supported me personally, firstly and foremostly as a person, by giving me that sense of well-being. As a veteran, it's very similar to being in the military. You have your camaraderie, you have your friendship patterns, you have your uniformity, and you have a reason. You have when you go into lodge, you have that sort of ceremonial side of life, and I thoroughly enjoy that, and it's been absolutely fantastic for me.
So I joined Team UK for the Invictus Games, kind of the wrong way round. So there's two parts. You have the Invictus Games and the Invictus Games Foundation. I actually went to Borneo on an expedition with other nations, and all of the guys and girls that were on the expedition had all done the games apart from me. So when I came back, I decided to apply for a games, and luckily I managed to get on. How sport helped me transition was being back around people, being back in a team environment, because I really did miss that from the military. Now that I'm a tattoo artist, I work on my own, and something speak to one client a day, and so to be back around a team of people and the camaraderie was brilliant.
Yeah, so the Not Forgotten Association is a 105-year-old veterans charity serving all three services, Army, Navy, Air Force and the Merchant Navy. And our focus has been through history to provide community, camaraderie, esprit and an environment conducive to restoring well-being in those who are struggling through loneliness, isolation, injury, illness, whether through service or post-service. And we do that through a whole series of activities and events, the Buckingham Palace Garden Party, St James's Palace Christmas Party, but then a whole series of regional, local events, concerts in care homes, community concerts, drive-in concerts, and it's not all just concerts, it's also a series of respite camps, UK and across the globe, and challenge events, UK and across the globe. Bringing a community together, but making that community small enough for the individuals attending, whether they're suffering from PTSD, anxiety or physical injuries, to feel like they're back home, to take away that stress, to take away that friction, and create a welcoming and inclusive environment. So they're small, surrounded by like-minded people, and whether it's a concert, normally 100 to 200 people maximum, often a drive-in concert, so you can be in your own safe space of your own vehicle or a friend's vehicle, or indeed we come and entertain in care homes where people are lonely and isolated, and again sometimes entertaining just 2, 3, 4 individuals, but really transforming their lives. Yeah, so the development opportunities for the relationship between the Not Forgotten and Freemasonry, ultimately it comes down to, through the perspective of the provinces, it comes down to, well, what's the value proposition, what's in it for us as a province, and the offering is, we as a charity service 10,000 veterans a year. We have a wonderful network which is already well established, but a big part of our ambition strategically is to engage more effectively into the regions, connect with like-minded organisations in the regions, and this is where, at lodge level and at provincial level, Freemasonry really brings a huge amount of horsepower to the table. We describe it as that sort of connective tissue. And when you mobilise our network alongside Freemasonry's network and all those other local associations and charities who we're all connected with, you can really support people who really need our help, and who perhaps we would never find, but also mobilise those additional funding streams in the regions as well, which again we may not routinely access.
From my point of view, Freemasonry before, I didn't really have any connection with the armed forces. As you know, I've just done this walk around the United Kingdom, and it highlighted some things for me. The purpose of the walk for me was to learn about myself. It was all about mental health and understanding about myself. And a big question I've always asked myself was a sense of how important is it for me to belong. And a couple of things came out of this process. I got to walk around the whole country. Walked through 21 provinces in England and Wales and 24 provinces in Scotland. And everywhere I went, I was obviously welcomed into lodges. I visited 350 Masonic buildings, and the biggest privilege really was to go into 110 meetings I think I attended. And two things happened. People would, when they knew what I was doing and why, they would be very open to talk to me about mental health. So that broke a barrier. But something else I noticed was that people that were ex-armed forces would introduce themselves as, hello, I'm John, I was in the army for 10 years, or I'm Paul, I was in the RAF for 20 years. And I realised then that sense of belonging and that connection was incredibly important to those people. And it was for me. I was born into the military. My father was in the REME for 27 years. I was born in a military hospital in Aldershot. Spent 16 years bouncing backward and forward, Germany, England. And then my grandfather on my dad's side was Royal Engineers, all of his career, and my mother's side was Royal Signals. So it's always been in our blood, the military. So we've never belonged anywhere. It's always been the same. My wife's dad was in the RAF. She's never belonged anywhere. So this thing of belonging is incredibly important. And I guess that conversation then that opened up with these people that are no longer in the armed forces, they all have the same thing. There's something missing in their life. When they come out of the armed forces, that door to the armed forces is closed. It'll never be opened again. You know, they're done with that. And I realised that Freemasonry was incredibly important to those people because it kind of squared that circle for them and put back in their life something that clearly was there in the military, which had gone. So that sense of belonging, that connection between the armed forces and Freemasonry really opened up to me then. Yeah, it was fascinating to experience.
That spirit of service knows no boundaries. Across Freemasonry, it's upheld not just by those who wear medals, but by those who proudly wear the square and compasses, regardless of gender. As we know, women have been able to be Freemasons in this country longer than they have had the right to vote. Through the Order of Women Freemasons and the Honourable Fraternity of Ancient Freemasons, women continue to honour service.
The Order of Women Freemasons signed the Armed Forces Covenant in March 2023 at our Grand Lodge building in the Grand Temple. It was a moment where we acknowledge and recognise serving personnel, either retired or current, the many members that we've had over the years, and we still do, that have got ties to the armed forces.
So the HFAF signed the Armed Forces Covenant in November 2023, and as a member of the Armed Forces, for me that felt like well, it was a good thing. For me, it meant there was going to be a lot more fairness, and that they've signed this agreement to treat service personnel fairly. We move around the country, our families come with us, and I just knew that at that point I've joined a fraternity that was also going to support me and my family, whether I'm away or as I move from job to job.
Freemasonry in the Armed Forces, united by service.